Hi there and welcome back, dear friends and deep thinkers. We're going to the ANIMANCER'S FOLLY Endurance Trail. It's about constructs. About constructs in the name of the survivor. Endure and you'll be victorious. Good hunting. This is a really, really crazy one. Now you can see that you can do something with Oasis there, but I'm giving you a tip, like, if you destroy one of the Oasis, I think there goes something into the thing in the middle, and then there goes a flash out there, and that will damage them. But yeah, let's just have a look. Yeah, we just had a look at the strengths and weaknesses of constructs. Like, they're mostly healed by fire, so fire is not a good idea against them. Mostly you can affect them by electricity, so chain lightning is a good idea against them. And then crushing damage is essentially what you need against them. We're just looking around for a good grimoire against them, but yeah, that's one of the strengths they have, right? Magic. So it's actually the Minor Blight spell, which gives you elemental damage, is actually pretty good, even though the fire damage does not really work that well on them, or does not at all work on them. The others are doing pretty good damage, like corrode and electricity in an area damage is just pretty good. So of course mind affecting and so on will not work against them. Yeah, what we need and what we want is crushing. Because that's what we're up against. We're up against a lot of mechanical units, units out of metal, and you want them like to crush or to be crushed. So we want to crush them, and that's going to be pretty good. Oh, I remember Resounding Call. We used that a lot at the start, but the hammer we now have from the iceberg is much better. So I generally say it's not really worth making an enchantment for this, but if you want to make an enchantment, yeah, you can do it. It's not crazy expensive at this point in the game. We're generally looking to, yeah, and that's the other thing, right? We're getting superb scepters here, so we can have also the ability to focus. And I've talked about the ability to focus already. Ability to focus is just very important to get the opponents down one by one. Area damage is not that important, except in some special cases. It's important that you hit and that you can focus. And if you can change your weapons very quickly, like you can do with when you have like 2 Black Jacket characters, which we have in Kevaver and which we have in Adonan, then you can do a lot of tactical focusing down of enemies, and you should do that. Because an enemy down doesn't do damage, it doesn't mess up anything, doesn't use cool abilities. So quickly reducing the number of enemies on the field is more important than always doing the highest damage to overall, because the opponents will do damage as well, and they can do that as long as they're alive. So focusing down almost always outclasses distributing damage with the goal of like getting the best damage output. You might get the best damage output, but the opponents will get out a lot more damage because you won't focus, or you won't focus as much. Here you can see our formation again, and the formation is of course like always put the tanks at the front and Lord Paul at the side, because Lord Paul can still guard very nicely, then do a couple of buffs and the Substantial Phantom, because the Substantial Phantom just helps over time very well. It's just a very good thing, and it can also, even if it's only a punching bag, it's a good experience. As you can see, we destroyed one of these things, and then that coil in the middle was activated, and it kind of destroyed the... not destroyed, it kind of damaged the constructs, and you can do that when you destroy like the vases that are around there, but it really doesn't have a big impact. I wouldn't change my strategy for that, and also the monsters, yeah, the constructs need to be close to that thing to be able to be affected. So it's all in all just a fight, like comparable to the fight we had in Consulhouse Mansion. It's a fight against very, very, very tough constructs. And they sometimes have really annoying abilities. The ability to spew fire over you is like crazy because it can do so much damage, and you'll see that later. It's just it's not something like chaotically strong or something like that, but it's a constant drain of resources. It's a really tough one, and it's for sure one of the craziest battles in the Survivor. It was also in the original non-sped up, I think 2 hours long fight, and I didn't like wait around or tarry a lot. We didn't wait a lot for what would happen. It's just a crazy ride to try this. It's just a crazy ride. Like 2 hours until we finally beat that thing. It's just tough. Like it's I will leave that open if we beat it this time, because some of the Crucible things, you know, you can go for multiple tries. It's definitely possible that you will not do them on the first instance. It's something that can happen. Some of the fights there, as you can see here, that is one of the fights that works perfectly also with turn-based, and it's relatively balanced, you can say. So it's mostly a joy to play this. What is also very cool is that the Crucible, and you can see that very often here due to the increased speed, is outdoors, and you have actually weather changes everywhere. And you always like have the lake around you there and the waves. I like to think it's symbolizing the waves of enemies that you encounter there. And here we go. No one interrupts them, but you should try. And that's why we have Cailvassa, to try and interrupt the opponents, and that will make a way free for other things. Now, giving him the last thing, the last damage. We'll see what happens now. Oh yeah, there's still one left. But it's going down. And what you should also do is going first for the Rustclad, then for the Ironclad, then for the Steelclad constructs. Why? Because it's much easier to kill the first ones, and they have comparable damage output to the Steelclad constructs. So first, destroy the ones that are easy to destroy. It's the best strategy. And here again, focus does wonders. I mean, to work on these with area spells is quite possible. Why is it possible? Because they don't regenerate, but there are opponents that regenerate, and then focus is the key, because otherwise you're working against tons of regenerative things, and that's just That's just a complicated matter. So we're gradually adapting here our strategy to the... Yeah, you can see we are trying to do it a little bit more creatively, but in the end we need to just withstand, destroy, and it could have been good, like to put out a wall there, maybe let it wander through. So now with the help of magic and skills, we're pounding on them. And that's always a critical moment when one of these giants goes into the back line, and you can't basically... The best strategy is still to focus. So you cannot just change the focus. It makes no sense. So you finish the one that is next on the list. It would be either the Rusty. If there's Rusty there, you go for Rusty first, then you go for the Ironclads, then you go for the Steelclads. And you need to be able to toughen out like one of them hitting on your, let's say, healer. Your healer can wear robes, but there's still defensive setups for healers. For example, you can use shields and stuff, and it should at least be an option for your second weapons hand, something like this. Because it really also helps the navy, and if that's one, yeah. So step by step, we were now trying out to destroy the vases, but I still don't know what the vases are good for. Also, we kind of started on the wrong side of history, and of course we wouldn't betray anyone. So yeah, and look at that. And that's kind of funny because you can use the construct's bodies also to conjure the flowery growth and all the hit point regeneration, which is great. And I was just thinking here that Kevaver would have to go out of there as government councils. What? Yeah, so we were at the vases again. Oh, my goodness me. So the vases. The vases have the effect of, like, as you can see, charging the one in the middle, and then it should damage the ones in that circle. So there must be a strategy too to send everyone into the middle and just wait there, and then have someone jump out from time to time and destroy the vases to destroy the enemies. That is probably a very viable one, but I haven't tried it because it was just more comfy and more used to put yourself into an edge, back to the wall, and then fight patiently and win that. And that's also, I still think that's the safest strategy, even if you have the undeniably strong effect that you can get from the middle. You still need the solid build. You still need to do everything solidly. Yeah, maybe we could have gone for that, but maybe they would have taken down like our healer or something like that. Because if you're in the middle of something and surrounded, it's very hard to guard everyone. Of course, you can get a lot of spells ticking up, giving everyone health back, but it's hard to do in such open land as we have here. So as you can see, we're still on it, and there's There's just tons of steel clads to do, and we're pounding and pounding and pounding on them. And what we've learned from the previous ones is that it's incredibly useful in these trials to save up resources. So if you do something ineffective, it's even worse than like you can risk missing one of the constructs. That's absolutely no problem. You keep your buffs until you really, really need them. And as long as you pound on them, you're relatively safe, because the next wave will only appear when the first one is completely down. And that's one of the saving graces of this, that you can, the start of a combat, you can save, and then you can like preserve your party like that. And always a help to keep things like your pet up, like the phantom up, things like that work also well against the constructs. Especially if you have the appropriate stuff equipped. So now, getting on and on and on. It's certainly something really, really special. This Crucible, I mean, one day I will try it, I'm sure, in real-time combat with pause. And here we go again. It's always a different mixture. From time to time it's only rusted to give you a pause, but this is just a lot of steel clads, and it's unforgiving. It's really unforgiving. You have to really look out. Even though the ironclads are, in my opinion, a little bit more unnerving, because they can go for that fiery furnace, or however it's called, for the area damage that they do. And they do good area damage. It can be really whittling down your resources. It's something risky. Look at the number of the so-called dead constructs over there. It's growing and growing and growing. It's a piece of soulless metal after piece of soulless metal. And these artifacts are also designed like after the golems that roam, for example, the D&D realms, and had been existing in the like around 20s, 1930s. There's actually a novel called The Golem, and that's really the first novel that really creates the impression of these evil or impartial golems that are just living to fulfill their master's will. In that case, yeah, of an evil scientist. I will not spoil it to you. It's a novel by Gustav Meyrink, and it's just a novel that shows so much, like the presence of the monster, the presence of the people around there, and the people themselves are also described and compared to the monsters around there. And it's the same here, right? Who creates these soulless creatures only living to destroy or to fulfill a task without soul? It can only be a monster. And all in all, like, that game seems a little bit, with all of the Ingwithan stuff, it's like a metaphor. Like a metaphor to the human world, right? Who's the Ingwithans? The Ingwithans is very, very tech-friendly people. What I mean with very tech-friendly is, I mean, I'm tech-friendly as well. But there's just people that want to replace humans with robots, and they want to replace expertise with AI and things like that. And that's a fascinating thing to do from the research. But in the end, you lose the human connection or the worldly connection to something like purpose that is connected to that. You only optimize, and you lose the connection to the world that this gives you when you care about it. That connection could be re-felt by the AI if it takes off one day, right? But it could also be that there's just a soulless expert, and no one can know or believe why they're right. And so, in the end, there's probably like a blind belief in these results. Like if you go and develop some kind of a calculating machine, it's the best calculating machine there is, and so you always believe its results, and you only use the calculating machine to calculate. So you lose the people that can calculate really well. They will have to do something else for their living, and so fewer people actually care about calculating. And then after a while, maybe some perimeter changes. If something is on there, if something is alive, if something is changing, and for example the universe, of course, is changing all the time, like not bigly often, but often just very, very, very small things change. And then the calculator that you've made is staying the same, but the conditions around it have eroded. And that's a danger. Also, everyone will then use the same way to calculate. And that's actually a disadvantage, because it will lead to a lot of things connected to survival and so on, estimating survival, using the same arithmetic means to calculate stuff, is actually like, after a short period of like the world shares everything, you will have a uniform science. And that's a big danger, because there's a lot of cul-de-sacs in things like science, and if there's the attention economy, and the attention economy is winner takes all. So that's what's happening very often, also on YouTube and so on. Like, there is a small number of creators or channels that get the big majority of views. It's like with money. Like, there's a small number of people that has a disproportionately high number of money, right? And so it's a winner-takes-all economy in all sizes, and that's a problem, because then you're missing alternatives. Because when the conditions change under which you exist, you might need an alternative, and the alternative could be already developed. But if you have no niches anymore where people or things or alternative things exist, and everyone uses the winner takes all, then you have a big problem in times of crisis. Because when the crisis affects a system that is interconnected and that is the same everywhere, and the crisis affects a critical part of that system, and it's the only system that exists, and there are no other replacement systems there, then you have all of a sudden the complete system is not working. Like the complete existence combination is not working, whereas before you had different systems, and some systems would die and the others would survive. Easy, right? Some systems die, some systems survive. But if there's a much too high centralization, first there's a blooming, because everyone gets exchange, then you have very high experts. They probably find like an optimized way to exist. That way is used, and human nature and also AI nature is it gets repeated, because it's the best way to do it. That's the winner takes all principle. It's very prevalent, especially in newer technologies now, because everything is copy pasta, right? You can copy everything. So that's the easiest way to do it. So if there's some successful way, it will be copied, and then it will have like a flaw. And that flaw can be the downfall of the whole system. That's why it is bad in some ways that the whole world is really connected. And that is what this game shows, right? The Engwithans. I don't know if that interests really you, but I think it's fascinating that this game has this metaphor. The Engwithans made this whole tech and like connected everything. And now everything is depending on the wheel somehow, on like that way of existence, that kind of faith is existing everywhere. The only difference is the kind of god you have there. If you travel around the Deadfire, you have different gods, but the principle is everywhere is the same. And that's what the Engwithans did. Like they made this mythical city, Kaizo, Animancy. They had strange soul machines that would like power, like that would also cause stability in certain places, and that you use Adra for some reason. And they were used to control the environment, and apparently the goal of the gods kind of was some kind of stable environment. And a very samey environment, like a centralized thing. And as I've already said, a centralized thing is very dangerous. Not only is it very weak in times of crisis, yeah, it can react quickly, but that's about all. It has no niches, it has no reserves. It's just a centralized system. The centralized system also leads to winner-takes-all economies. So if you're not at the center in the centralized system, the bigger it is, the worse off the people at not the center are, because the centralized system cares most about the center. You can see that in France. France is a very centralized government. I mean, France is still relatively diverse because it's a democratic government. There's départements, there's everything. But if you have a problem in France, it's a centralized problem and it affects the whole country. Whereas, for example, in a country like Germany or in the US, problems are usually contained like within the counties of the country, right? You have a county that has a big problem with, for example, let's take COVID, right? You have a certain county that has a big problem with COVID, but others will have still capacity because they've already had COVID and it's like everyone is kind of immune now or something like that, and the hospitals are starting to free up again, and so you can bring people from one system to the next system to save them. But if you manage the whole country same-ish, then you have a big crisis, because you will have a situation. The situation before the crisis is then there's no danger. Then all of a sudden everything is overwhelmed and you have no way to get to another point, to another isolated point. Like you have the only other system that you have is not inside of that country, for example France, but to use another country as help, like it was actually done. Like some French people, I don't think many, but some were brought over to Germany for treatment, because at that point Germany had like a bordering county to France, which had open room for people in the hospitals, at the ICUs. And so that's one of the advantages of having a decentralized but still networked system. Like it's working together but keeping up the power. That was also the matter with Germany when it was reunited. From all the little counties there, it was suddenly the most powerful realm in Europe. Not only because of its size. I mean, France would also have a good size and things, but because of the diversity that came together and created a magnificence of combinations and ideas and everything like that. So that was really blooming science. But then after the centralization is there, you have to be very careful to preserve the niches, because if you don't preserve the niches, then the whole country takes one direction, and that's a big weakness, because humans tend to make mistakes or tend to have weaknesses in their decisions. And if you only take one decision for the whole country and you make a fatal mistake, then the whole country will go down, suffer terribly. But if we have different systems, then some of them can make mistakes and some of them can be successful, and the successful ones can help the ones that make mistakes. And also, even if one of the ones pretty much go down, then you still have other surviving systems. You can see which kind of system is the best system. You cannot do that if you have a centralized. If you have only one system and use one system, it might be a comfy feeling for everyone. This is how we do things here, right? But the lack of alternative action can and will be a big problem in the face of a crisis. It's just like that. It's just like that. This is also what this game kind of is about. Everyone is like dancing around the technology of the Inquisitors. Everyone wants the technology of the Inquisitors. And what will that lead to? It will lead to centralization. Like, it's a challenge, it's a competition. One of the faction wants the technology of the Inquisitors and wants to take over the world there then. But that would rob this world of its advantage, of its variety, of its survivability. That's also what like happened when, for example, China united. A long time ago, when China united. What happened then? It was a blooming age. It was the best age of China ever possible. China was for quite some time the most innovative realm out there. The same as the Inquisitors here. But then something happened. What did they do to preserve that? They wanted to preserve their perfection, right? They built a Chinese wall. So it's an exclusion. It's an exclusion. Not only was everything made like flat, everything the same again, which first led, because diverse things met together, which led to first a blooming science, but then you would even overemphasize that. We don't need other influences, and lock up your country from the rest of the world. And what then happened was the decline, and suddenly Kublai Khan was on the throne of the Chinese, right? Even the freaking Mongols went over and overran it. For some reason, like there was a big, a huge stagnation. And we have defeated the centralized government here. Thank you for watching, and happy gaming to you. I'm sorry for much of the talking, but it's just that you can only do things so often. So thank you for watching, and happy gaming to you. we'll see each other soon. And we'll probably forge an alliance or try to do that. Have a great time until then and happy gaming. This is Immanuel Khan signing out. See you soon and happy gaming.